Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Manouk, and I'm here with the Rady Jewish Community Center on behalf of the Rady JCC as well as Gwen Sector Creative Living Center at Sid Glow Place. I have the absolute pleasure of kicking off this week's Familiar Faces Showcase. Before I do that, though, I do want to take a moment and recognize formally our sponsors for our Familiar Faces series, the Asper Foundation as well as the Babs Asper Center for Cultural Arts. It is your leadership that allow us to offer this virtual series to all of you at no cost to yourselves. The Asper Foundation and the Babs Asper Center for Cultural Arts, they recognize the need for this type of programming more than ever before right now, given the climate we are living in, given the feeling that many of us have, feeling isolated at home. We hope that this showcase, as well as all the other showcases as part of our series, do bring some warmth and make you feel connected once again to the Jewish community, which we all love and cherish. We also want to take a moment and we want to recognize the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg for your ongoing support for both our agencies, Gwen Sector as well as the Rady. Okay, now that we've done that, on with today's show. I am very, very excited to introduce this week's showcase, an interview with Jamie Michaels, the author and producer of Christie Pits, a graphic novel centered around the 1933 riot at Christie Pits. Before we get into our in-depth conversation with Jamie, I just want to share with you all a quote from well-known Jewish Winnipeg author Alan Levine about Jamie's graphic novel. Alan writes, "There have been other histories of anti-Semitism in Toronto and Canada in the 1930s, but none as creative as Jamie Michaels' Christie Pits. He has produced an authentic tale revolving around the 1933 riots at Christie Pits, but also one that brilliantly captures the complexities and nuances of day-to-day life in Toronto during the decade in which prejudice and discrimination were endemic." So Jamie is here with us today to tell the story of how his graphic novel, Christie Pits, came to be and how it's been received ever since the launch in 2019. So please help me welcome to the stage this morning, Jamie Michaels. So, Jamie, welcome, and first and foremost, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Sit down here with me to spare a few minutes to share the story of how your graphic novel came to be.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I'm excited to be here.
That's wonderful. And, I initially met Jamie a few years back now. I was at the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba at the time, and Jamie had actually applied for a special grant, one of the types of grants the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba awards, to help kick off and start his Christie Pits novel. So when I heard the story of how this came to be then, it kind of stuck with me. And when his graphic novel was published, I was one of the first to grab a copy, and actually I still have it on my desk today. I think it's incredible, and I'm excited for many of you who may not know about it to learn about it today and to eventually pick up your copies and read it. So, Jamie, again, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Before we break in, this is the Familiar Faces series, which means, we are showcasing members of the Jewish community here in Winnipeg who have ties to Winnipeg, grandparents, parents, kind of that 6 degrees of Jewish geography. And I did mention, obviously, right at the top that you did receive a Jewish Foundation of Manitoba grant, so right away there's your tie to Winnipeg, to the Jewish community of Winnipeg. But tell me a little bit more about yourself, Jamie. How do you fit into this Jewish community we all find ourselves living in right now?
Jewish geography is always risky for me because I'm one of the worst players. But I'm going to hazard a few and kind of step into the game here. So I grew up in Winnipeg. I love this city, greatest city in the world. I'm thankful to have grown up here. Went to Grant Park High School. My dad went to Calvin. My mom went to Grant Park. It's a real Romeo and Juliet situation. And I really feel that this community has supported me throughout this process. As you mentioned, the Jewish Foundation provided the initial grant to launch the project. And, I'm kind of tackling these really important issues of the history of anti-Semitism and Canada's really darker history that is brushed under the proverbial carpet. Mm-hmm. So to have the financial resources to do that really makes that possible. To initially fund the graphic novel, I was helicopter firefighting for years.
Wow.
So,
really?
Everyone's got to have a day job.
Yeah.
And, my mother calls me right now. It's buzzing my pocket so I can quit. But, it's that process of kind of grinding and working hard and having some foundational support for that really does make a huge difference.
So, you know, to the audience that's watching this today, Jamie, many of them may not exactly know what Christie Pits was, like what it's all about, what the riot was, and where it took place, and why it took place. Would you be able to kind of shine a light on kind of what Christie Pits, what the riots were about, and why they took place, and when they happened, to our audience who may not be as aware?
Absolutely. So the Christie Pits Riot is Canada's largest eruption of ethnic or racial violence. And it kind of is not a singular event, but a culmination of decades of anti-Semitic government policy. So we're looking at a time across the country where there have been quotas on Jews regarding immigration, quotas on Jews regarding education, de facto restrictions on where Jews could and could not live. And we see this across the country, even here in our home province of Manitoba. And if you're a Jew in North America at the time, you're likely an immigrant or a first-generation Jewish Canadian. You've left an Eastern European country that has persecuted you for hundreds of years. And there's a real theme now of where next? Where can Jews live safely and equitably? At the same time, we're seeing Hitler's become the chancellor in Nazi Germany. Anti-Semitism is on the rise around the world. And at Christie Pits Park, a Jewish baseball team was playing a Gentile baseball team at a large outdoor game. And at this game, a swastika flag was flown. So this is kind of a spark that sets Toronto on fire. Jewish athletes say, enough is enough. We're going to live here. We're equal citizens. We're not going to be intimidated. They go to take the flag. Violence erupts at the ballpark and spills across the city. 10,000 combatants are fighting in the streets of Toronto. And after the riots, and this is maybe a real takeaway from these experiences, the mayor says, no, enough is enough. We'll no longer fly the swastika in Toronto. Citizens cannot fly the swastika in Toronto. And we kind of see the origins of an anti-hate speech policy coming out of these events.
How did you first learn about this?
So I've got two claims to Christie Pits fame.
Okay.
One is that I was at a Winnipeg Gold Eyes game with my junior high school, and another high school said, hey, look at these dirty Jews, and we had a brawl in the stands.
Wow.
So this is a lived experience for me. It's not historical, and I think for many Jews in Winnipeg and your viewers across the country and outside of the nation also have these firsthand lived experiences. These are not historical events. They're contemporary events that have historical roots. So I wanted to capture what that felt like for me as a historian, as a Jewish Canadian. I overheard the story of the Christie Pits riots at a pub. And
Okay.
I thought, no, that didn't happen. I'd know about it. Mm-hmm. So I said, Jamie, just like those Christie Pits riots. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Then I snuck out to the washroom, Wikipedia on the cell phone. But okay, how do I not know about this? And I kind of thought this is a real opportunity to teach a history of Canadian anti-Semitism through a touchstone event.
Yeah, yeah. So that makes sense. But, you know, the average mind who hears this, who's an author like yourself, would think, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to tell that story, and I'm going to share it. You went one step further. Instead of saying, I'm going to write a book, you said, I'm going to write a book, but I'm going to make it a graphic novel. So why a graphic novel to tell the story and not just a traditional book of sorts?
I think that every story has a medium through which it can best be told. The Empire Strikes Back has to be a film. Catcher in the Rye has to be a novel. Christie Pits has to be a graphic novel. And the reason behind that is we're able to offer archival touchstones, real photographs of Toronto at the time that we used to base our illustrations off of. So intuitively, in reading through the graphic novel, you'll get a feeling of what Toronto was like at the time. We do the same thing with historical newspapers of the day. We're trying to give you a window into not just what it looked like, but also what it felt, what it smelled like, what was the feel of being Jewish at this time in history. And the graphic novel was the best vehicle for us to do that, and it's accessible. You can take it to a high school classroom. They're not going to read a historical textbook, but they love Christie Pits.
So how do you go about putting a graphic novel like this together? I mean, you have the story. I know that you what did you study? You went to London for school, correct? And what did you study out in London?
Creative writing, because everybody makes mistakes.
So you studied creative writing. So I mean, you're an author by every right. So how do you go from being an author to put together a graphic novel? Like, are you also an artist? Did you do your own your original drawings and then brought in an illustrator? Or, like, was it your vision in terms of the visual as well, or did you leave that to your partner that you partnered with to put this book together?
I think every graphic novel collaboration is a collaboration, and that needs to be highlighted. Art is a strong word for anything that I'm associated with, so I had to bring an artist.
Okay.
And for Christie Pits, I did the archival research, I verified the history, and I really wanted to, because I was presenting this history, make sure everything was accurate. So going to the Ontario Jewish Archives, City of Toronto Archives, Ontario Provincial Archives, checking the sources. Going to the sources, making sure the history was rock solid. From there, writing the initial script, writing the storyboards, and because, genetically speaking, I'm a bit neurotic, to go and block out these storyboards almost like a mini comic, and then taking those to an illustrator and going back and forth with him, because once you make a graphic novel, it's a marriage. He'll give me feedback on how I'm presenting the story. I'll give him feedback on how he's presenting the story. I worked with Doug Fedro on this project, and I was lucky to have him. In many senses, Doug is from Manitoba. He's from outside the Jewish community, and it was great for the back and forth. So I could say, Doug, I want to have a boxing gym here, and the trainer is a relatively new immigrant, and I want you to give him a boxing towel around his neck where the edges are frayed to mimic a talus. He said, Jamie, great idea, I love it. Okay. What's a talus?
That's very funny. So, obviously, the backdrop of your graphic novel is centered around a very real event. The characters within the graphic novel, are they fictitious in nature, or are they based around real individuals? Are they, is it a somewhat of a fabric with a creative liberty taken there?
The characters are all fictional, and the idea for me was to go beyond archetypes, to have, and we see this in the Jewish community. Who is a Jew? And that's a real question within the community that I wanted to reflect on in the book. So we've got some people that are more traditional in their practices. They're a bit firmer in the way they observe their Judaism. We've got some characters that are more secular, and they're trying to integrate into Canadian society in a way of leaving some elements of that Judaism behind. But I really wanted to show how strong that community was despite these differences.
So, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. The fact that you can put something, so the fact that this is created first and foremost in your mind. And then to go from this idea in your mind to doing the actual hard work, which you've done, obviously, to then get this thing put together, all the pieces in place that you had to start and run with. It's absolutely incredible. Plus, you said, obviously, you're working full-time at the same time, right? And I mean, you're not just working full-time, you're a helicopter firefighter, correct? That's what you're doing. I mean, so it's not like you're just going and you're pushing paper around all day and you're going home and you're writing this thing in your downtime. So, I mean, you have to be commended for that. So, you said you wanted to do this because you wanted to educate people, just like you learned about it, just like I learned about it from you originally. So how has it been received? How has the feedback been since, you originally published this thing back in 2019? How far has the reach gotten? And I'm curious to know, just again, what that feedback has been from your audience.
We've been really lucky, and as a writer, I've been humbled by the community response. Irving, Abella, who's an incredible historian who really inspired me in my practice, was so generous in writing our introduction. As you mentioned in your introduction, having Alan Levine give it such strong words as well. It's just incredible from the academic side, but also taking the book to schools, to have people email me and say, I'd never heard of this event before. And I kind of view Christie Pits now as not simply a graphic novel, but more of the Christie Pits project. How do we think about the Jewish Canadian experience? After the graphic novel, I wrote the encyclopedia article on Christie Pits. So now it's more accessible in terms of institutional knowledge. I had the Ivy League university system pick up copies of the book, university systems across Canada. I've been in to talk to high schools. I've had the opportunity to take the book on a media tour in North America and in Israel. So I'm really flattered by the response in the sense that Christie Pits has been an idea that was so important to me, but it's rare for these ideas to get out of our parents' garages.
Of course. I mean, 99.9% of them, they stay there, right? And they don't go anywhere, unfortunately. And you went beyond that, and then, I mean, that's an understatement, the understatement of the world. In Toronto, where all this took place, all this transpired, how has it been because I'm assuming, and I know that you were in Toronto doing some media and doing some promotion for obviously your graphic novel. How did the local Jewish community in Toronto embrace your graphic novel being there in Toronto?
The uptake in Toronto was excellent. We had a launch at Congregation Bet Tzedek when the book was first being released. We had hundreds of people turn out for that. And we've got a bit of a shtick. You have to have a shtick, you know.
Of course,
a lot of people releasing books in Toronto.
So what's your shtick? You got to, of course, I wouldn't expect anything else from you. What's your shtick?
So our shtick is, in 1933, and this is truly amazing, Hitler sent his favorite boxer to America to fight a Jewish #1 contender. And this is, you know, we're talking a sold-out Yankee Stadium. What an incredible, electric moment in both politics and sports. So to kind of curate that electricity, we mentioned that fight in the graphic novel. And during the reading, we actually hide boxers in the audience. So the reading is taking place, and then we have two boxers and a referee pop out and fight shirtless in front of the audience. So we're a big hit.
That's wild. That's absolutely wild. And you said, obviously, you've gone even beyond North America. You said you were in Israel for a time, taking the Christie Pits story out there. If you had to kind of gauge sort of just, again, the education level that, you know, Jews today, our generation of Jews, whether it's here in Winnipeg, across Canada, North America, or in Israel, how well known would you have say that the Christie Pits story is?
I think, like all of our histories, it's important and simultaneously it's easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the story is becoming better known, and we're trying to also offer entry points in different ways. I mentioned the encyclopedia article. We have a forthcoming documentary project in partnership with Historica Canada.
Okay.
So that's coming out. We're also looking at taking this in terms of animation direction. So we're putting together kind of a proof of concept short film based on the Christie Pits characters, hopefully being released in the next year to year and a half. So it's nice to kind of have multiple platforms to teach this history.
So if you had to describe yourself, are you an author? Are you a historian? Are you an artist? How would you or are you all of the above? What are you?
I'm still an amateur Jewish cage fighter trying to make it in the world here.
That's it right there. I like that very, very much. That's very humble. And obviously, you mentioned what you have coming up, which I think is absolutely thrilling. I mean, I know that this is just kind of a start. I know that, you know, as the years go on, and as, you know, you continue to tell history through your lens, right? Through the Jamie Michaels lens. I think you are, just like you're saying, you're opening that door up to so many who wouldn't embrace that and take time to learn about that if it was in more of a, like you said, more of a traditional form, more of, you know, just a novel or a paperback or a textbook. The fact that you are bringing life to it, the fact that I think you found that medium, that graphic novel medium, I think it really resonates. I know for myself, again, personally, I go back to 2019 when I first got my copy. I read the whole thing, and I mean, I'm not a reader, I'll be honest, okay? But I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated from the moment I heard about this concept you had to again, having it in front of me. And in turn, I mean, you taught me something as well. I mean, I learned about, you know, the Christie Pits Riots, which, you know, I knew about, but I didn't know about, if that makes sense. And now I know about, and not only do I know about it, but I talk about it. And, you know, and I share what I've learned through your graphic novel now with my contemporaries. And I think that's very important. And I think you've done a great thing there, not just for the Jewish community, but I know this transcends beyond our Jewish community. And I want you to know just that. So in terms of the graphic novel then, I know that, you know, you did an initial launch in 2019. I know it was extremely well received. I believe you did some crowdfunding online, which was great. And people were able to kind of buy in, and a lot of people got their books, and the reviews were spectacular. If somebody wants to go pick up your book now, your graphic novel now, pardon me, how do they go about doing that? Are there any available? How would they buy it?
Absolutely. So they can check out our website, dirtywatercomics.com, free shipping anywhere in Canada. Or if you're in town here, you can stop by McNally Robinson and pick up a copy.
Okay, well, listen, you've made me a believer and a fan. I mean, like I said, I'm saying that again and again. You know, I've got my copy here right now, and I'm actually going to ask you to sign it when we're wrapped up here because I didn't get a chance to when I first got it and when we first met. And, you know, again, I can't wait to see what you and your partners come up with next. I can only imagine what you're thinking about. I can only imagine what's going on in your head. And, you know, our community would be lucky if we had more people like yourself to be able to, again, tell our history in a way that our next generation are going to embrace, and they're going to continue to retell again and again. So, you know, again, on behalf of Gwen Sector, on behalf of the Rady JCC, I want to thank you for taking time, Jamie, today. It means a lot. And again, for those of you watching, on the bottom of this video you're watching, I will put a link to Jamie's website if you are looking to secure your copy of the Christie Pits graphic novel that he's put together here. You know, here's to great things ahead. I thank you again. I want to take a moment again, just one more time, and thank our sponsors of the Familiar Faces series, both the Asper Foundation as well as the Babs Asper Center for Cultural Arts. And again, it's your leadership that allow us to offer incredible stories like Jamie's, like he just shared here, to our audience, to you guys, free of charge. So thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to everyone that's tuned in this week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a good day.